Examples that are given by R.J. Rees include In Every Man in His Humor. Again, that's by Ben Jonson. You find that there are three different characters who are no more characters here. So they are, as we say, the characters are not as important as much as what they stand for. The weakness, it could be the passion, which we are talking about. So Keightley is a jealous husband in this play. So that jealousy is a quality for which he stands. So it's not the character here, but it is the weakness, and the weakness is jealousy. Old novel is worried. So it's more of the anxiety of old novel that stands out in the comedy. And Captain Bodabil is a very talkative kind of a person. He talks a lot, but is a very, very cowardly man. And now when we look at these three characters of Ben Jonson's Every Man in His Humor, he is very beautifully brought the qualities. When we look at these three characters, we know that he's not talking about individuals, he's not talking about the character, he's majorly talking about the qualities, the passion or the weakness. And the weaknesses that are shown here are jealousy, anxiety and boastfulness, through these characters that are being shown. So what happens is these weaknesses are used to make the audience laugh. So if you find Captain Bodabil being very talkative, and his talkative nature makes the audience laugh because he's only boasting about himself. He boasts about himself. He talks big things. He talks a lot, but he doesn't have the courage. He's a very cowardly man. And now this weakness makes people laugh. So after having discussed the two major types of comedy, the first one is the romantic comedy that we discussed, where we talked about Shakespeare and Shakespearean comedies and the qualities of comedy, of romantic comedy, where you find more of romance. But at the same time, the second is totally different. Ben Jonson's Comedy of Humors, which specifically talks about various weaknesses of the characters. So it is the weakness of the characters that make people laugh. So in everyday life also we see that whenever we laugh, we always laugh at people's foibles, people's mistakes, and some kind of strange behaviors, or these are the things that make you laugh. So comedy of humor belongs to that category. I mean that type where such weaknesses are highlighted and brought about before the audience to make them laugh and entertain them, to amuse them. The third type that we are going to discuss today is comedy of manners. As the name itself suggests, manners. It talks about the manners, the mannerisms of a particular group of people. It could be the aristocratic class of a society. It could be the upper class. It could be the lower class. It could be a particular group of people about whom whose weaknesses or foibles are exhibited, are performed or highlighted, brought to the center stage, that would make people laugh. The ultimate aim of any of these comedies is to make the audience laugh. Comedy of manners, we will see that the first point itself shows that Restoration dramatists have contributed to this type of comedy. The comedy, we call it as Restoration comedy as well, but in particular, comedy of manners were written by the Restoration dramatists. This was a period when we're talking about a city, the urban society, the civilized urban society, which has flourished after industrialization, when people have migrated and come to the urban city, and how the urbanized and civilized people behave, particularly group of people. Here we are not making fun of one particular individual like what we saw in Comedy of Humor. It's that one individual for jealousy. Old novel, you know that he is a person who has a different quality, and the third, so jealousy is something which makes you laugh. How a husband is jealous of his wife, and that can make people laugh. But here it is different. Here it makes fun not of individuals but of social groups. So in Comedy of Manners, it's entirely a social group that is poked fun at, that is being talked about, and this is specifically to create awareness, to bring about change. And when we talk about the urban society, the fashionable manners, because city and rural life, they're so different. So for instance, if you read Oliver Goldsmith, you would know She Stoops to Conquer. Also, it's a very good example of this Comedy of Manners, the mannerisms that you find of Mr. Hardcastle's daughter. You have Marlowe, you have Hastings. These are the characters, but then they don't stand out as characters, but it talks about a particular class, the upper class, the urban civilized society, and the fashionable manners which is made fun of. To laugh at the social convention of the duel, that is what you find in Sheridan's The Rivals. Now, these are some of the examples that are being given so that you can go back and read these plays and try to identify, look for these particular kind of features within the comedy that you read. Now, Sheridan's The Rivals is a very, very popular play. It laughs at the social convention, and it at the same time it also amuses and entertains, as any comedy is required to do. There is no clear borderline between comedy and satire here. Simply making people laugh and amusing them and entertaining them is very, very appreciated, and it makes it becomes very popular with the audience. But literature has a different role altogether. It is not just about amusing or entertaining. We have all studied that literature intends to bring reforms, to teach, to preach, that's why we call it has got a didactic quality. And therefore satire is one way of bringing out the nastiness, not in a nasty manner, but then it is being projected, it is being put forth before the audience to make them aware of the society and its foibles. So when we talk about comedy, comedy is not just about laughing, and it's not just about having some love stories and having a happy ending, but must contain some kind of social comment, as we can see. So even the lightest of the comedy that you have, it should have something to talk about, especially to discuss about the society. It is satirical, as we have seen, Comedy of Manners, because it talks about a particular group of people. So it's a satire. It is certainly talking about their negativity, but then it's been projected in a very, very good natured way, because it also needs to amuse. It cannot be very critical in its presentation. So in a play, in a comedy of manners, you will find that it's presented in a very good natured way, so that it sends the message, as well as it also makes the society aware of its own foibles. That's the main intention behind. It's like we talk about literature as a mirror of life, right? So it's just like showing a mirror to you, and you see how the society is, So the society is made to see its own reflection when a comedy of manner is being presented or it's being performed on a stage. And all these performances have got very good impact on the audience. The only problem with this comedy of manners is, sometimes the dialogues that are being used, they are of very low moral tone. So morality has lost its significance, and this has happened with specifically during the Restoration age. You will find that there are a lot of illicit relations, illegitimate relations that are being shown within the play. So moral weakness of a particular social group. Now, basically these people are from the upper class, and it is their moral weakness which is being highlighted, and it is highlighted not only to make people aware, but also to make them laugh at, not to approve it. As I already mentioned this, that most likely you find that this is found, the degradation of moral values is found in aristocratic group, and therefore they become the subject of laughter. People laugh at these moral degradation among this part of the society. It is a highly artificial form of drama, full of verbal wit, and sometimes it is cynical and hard. So when we are discussing the harsh realities of life, it may not be easily digested by the audience, because you have these aristocratic group also coming to watch these plays, right? And therefore it has to be presented in a very nice manner, and therefore the writer, the playwright, has to be very clear about it, that he uses a lot of verbal wit. It has to be witty, interesting. How do you, when you're talking about somebody's weakness, what is it that would make them laugh? So to make them laugh, you have to make use of wit. So verbal wit, specifically because you're talking about the aristocratic group, so it has to be witty. And sometimes you'll find that because there's satire, it's cynical, and sometimes it's little hard as well. It is also obvious that, as I said, occasional indecency and permissiveness is also some of the features that you find, some of the aspects that you find in the Restoration dramas, the comedy of manners. As a type, when we talk about, it's a comedy of manners that we are discussing, where this occasional indecency is also permitted, because that's the way society is, and it has to be shown, it has to be performed and communicated to the audience, to the target audience. And that's one reason that a certain amount of indecency in this play, which were not found in the romantic comedies or in comedy of humor, but you'll find that in comedy of manners, because that's the way particular urban upper class or aristocrat class people behaved. Some of the major contributors of this particular comedy of manner is William Congreve, Oscar Wilde, and Sheridan. Vaishali's The Country Wife is also among them. The fourth category, that's the fourth type of comedy we are discussing now, which is known as the sentimental comedy. We discussed the romantic comedy, we discussed comedy of humor and comedy of manners. Now this is the fourth type, the sentimental comedy. The chief writer or the initiator, as we can call, of the sentimental comedy is Sir Richard Steele, who is more known for his periodicals. He is written with an intention of expressing moral sentiments. Now, if you can just look back at the history, you will find that there has always been a change from the previous. So if you had the Restoration, which will always be which has to be followed by something like sentimental comedy, because here the moral sentiments are being expressed, and that is the main when we talk about sentiments means the feelings they express. It contain an element of preaching. Now when we want to make people laugh, or when we want to entertain, that doesn't that doesn't make sense when you are preaching. Preaching is always about teaching, telling to do what is right and what is wrong, which is not very receptive. The audience are not receptive to this kind of preaching. So preaching disguised as entertainment, in the robe of entertainment, preaching is done, and the moral sentiments are being expressed in this kind of play. Sentimental comedy is the major focus is expressing the moral sentiments. So it's more a kind of preaching disguised as entertainment. Steele's The Funeral is a very popular sentimental comedy. In 1922, The Conscious Lovers, and if you look at the present plays that are being written, the comedies that are being written, you can see that there has been a rebirth of sentimental comedy under different names. That's it. Only the names change, but the type remains the same. So the drama of social consciousness, or the drama of commitment, is a new name